the construction process, what would y'all do different? Y'all made touches on that. Would you care to like expand and list them?
You mentioned the whole heating. You would design the house according to your heating.
Right.
Wood stove closer to the door so you don't track across the rug, bringing in wood. And also the cold air comes in from the door when you open it. So if you have your source of heat there, it makes it warm.
And have a cold air duct dedicated to the wood stove so that the wood stove is not pulling cold air from the room. The way we initially set it up, we had the wood stove on the opposite side of the house from the door. And there's a very tight house, except for the door, which we intentionally didn't try to seal because we knew we had to have air coming in from somewhere.
You have to put some wood in the wood stove.
So what would happen is the wood stove would pull cold air across the floor. And because it had to draw air from somewhere, and it was coming from the door on the other side of the house. So basically, the wood stove was cooling the downstairs in order to produce heat. And the heat would then go up into the loft. So the loft would be tropical and the downstairs would be frigid. So, moving the wood stove closer to the door, giving it its own cold air intake, 2 big steps. Cob, it can be wonderful thermal mass. So if you heat cob and that cob is protected from the cold outside, it will gradually release that heat into the room. We haven't really enjoyed that because our cob walls aren't insulated from the outside. So gradually that heat just goes on out. So what we want to do is a cob bench over a horizontal flue. And the flue will heat that cob. That cob will be insulated from the outside. So we'll have this mass. It's like a masonry stove that we're creating in effect. And that cob will be radiating heat out into the room. So that also moderates your heat. It's a very gentle, slow release of heat over time, whereas a wood stove tends to be more all or nothing, especially our wood stove, which is 20 years old. It was given to us. It's a little leaky. Lynn mentioned starting to insulate the foundation. We're doing this, I guess you call it skirting insulation, where you bury the 2-inch styrofoam board in the ground, slightly angled, but pretty much horizontal. So it's all around the house, and that means that the ground outside the house is insulated. So frost isn't going to get as close to the underside of the house. So the floor of the house and even the lower foundation of the house are going to tend to stay warmer.
Okay. So those are just the primary things? Are there any other little details that...
Well, did Lynn mention our addition? We're planning to do an addition on the west side of the house, and we're going to use bale cob. Bale cob is a cobber's approach to straw bale. It was invented by Yanto Evans, the same person who taught us how to cob, and basically it's a load-bearing straw bale structure that is chinked with cob and then has 3 to 4 inches of cob on either side of the bales. So you end up with a very rigid sandwich wall with a bale inside. So it's also got a very high R value. We're doing it on the west side, so that'll insulate the entire west wall of the existing house. And that should be an easy room to keep warm because of its high R value. So we're going to use it as a bathing room, and we're also going to use it as a year-round growing space. We've scrounged some 4-foot by 4-foot glass from a remodeling project in town. We have 3 sheets of that. We're going to put those together in one window, one super insulated window, and we're going to use a Solatube like a grow light. We'll have a growing table, and the solar tube will come down, and we'll have to experiment with how close the solar tube should be to the table. But as far as we can see, a solar tube should make an excellent grow light, and it has the advantage of it gives you light without losing heat. So solving the common problem of greenhouses in cold climates. So next year, when we do our next interview, we can give you a report on the addition and how it performed. We learned some little lessons. You really have to have experience with natural building in your location before you can consider yourself knowledgeable. We learned cob near the Oregon coast. Low temperatures like 25 degrees. We can go 50 degrees below that, and we did last winter. So some things that we did in Oregon you don't do here. Like in Oregon, if you're doing a fixed window, you can just take any old piece of glass and cob around it. Just make sure you don't cut yourself. You can make that window any shape you want using the cob. Well, you do that here, and naturally that glass is colder, and so you get condensation on the glass. The condensation goes straight down. Well, if you've got it straight in your cob and your plaster, that's moisture going into your plaster, into your cob. It's not enough to threaten the integrity of the cob, but it is enough to grow mold in your plaster. So now you could do special plasters or tile that could deal with that water, but in cold climate, I'm not sure about that technique. You may want to frame in your windows. Well, I guess it's a credit to the initial design process that I'm having trouble thinking of things that we would do differently.
But design the kitchen to be big enough to have a wood stove in it, I think.
Yeah, we haven't figured out how to achieve that yet, but we do a lot of cooking on the wood stove in the winter. So it'd be very convenient to have the wood stove part of our little kitchen nook. Then again, the house is so small that having the wood stove on the other side is just like having it on the other side of a normal kitchen. So
Okay.
that would be nice if we could ever figure out how to do it.